Being born on two opposite sides of the country, playing for two different colleges, and having two very different paths to the NBA, you wouldn't really expect Dale Davis and Antonio Davis to have much in common. You definitely wouldn't expect them to be called brothers. But despite this, they would play 6 seasons together, being known as two of the toughest players in the NBA. Antonio Davis was born in Oakland, California. He would go on to play college basketball at UTEP under legendary coach Don Haskins. In Antonio's 4 years there, they would never have a losing record and make the NCAA tournament every season. Antonio would even be named to the All-Western Athletic Conference team twice. Despite his very decorated college career, Antonio wouldn't be drafted until the second round, going 45th overall to the Indiana Pacers. Antonio would decide to go play in Europe instead of going straight to the NBA. But after 3 seasons abroad, he would come back to America and sign with the Pacers. Dale Davis was born in Toccoa, Georgia, and would play his college basketball at Clemson. In Dale's 4 years, Clemson would have a losing record in 2 of them. They did have a good run in 1990, but other than that, they were very middle of the road as a program. But Dale individually was putting up very good numbers, averaging 17 points, 12 rebounds, and 2.6 blocks in his senior year. This was good enough to get him picked 13th overall by the Indiana Pacers. So while Antonio was playing in Europe, Dale would become the starting power forward for the Pacers. But in 1993, both of them would finally play together, Dale wearing number 32 and Antonio wearing number 33. Antonio would later go on to say that those teams felt like a family, and Dale embraced him as a teammate. So while Dale and Antonio have very different backgrounds and took very different paths to get to where they were, they really did embrace each other like brothers. They battled on the court game in and game out, going to the Eastern Conference Finals 4 times together, also getting in numerous fights over the years. And while the Davis brothers didn't put up 20 points per game, or rack up a bunch of accolades, or even spend 15 or 20 years together, they were part of the core of those Pacers teams. They did the dirty work grabbing rebounds, playing good defense, and protecting their teammates. Sadly, after the 1999 season, Antonio Davis would request a trade due to his lack of playing time. This would split up the Davis brothers duo as Antonio was traded to Toronto. But what makes it even more painful is that in 2000 the Pacers would finally break through and win an Eastern Conference championship, punching their ticket to the NBA Finals. Dale would be gone after the 2000 season, being traded for Jermaine O'Neal. But Pacers fans will never forget the grit and toughness the Davis brothers brought. Dale was the highly touted first-round pick, putting up double-doubles nearly every game. Antonio had to fight his way into the NBA, earning every minute of playing time he got and even participating in the 1994 dunk contest, and was considered one of the best bench players in the NBA. While the logjam at power forward probably split up the Davis brothers, that level of competition made them better.
I know on this channel I kind of talk a lot about dudes that are gritty and tough, and I throw the words like blue collar athlete and stuff like that around a lot, and I just talk about those kind of dudes a lot. But Antonio Davis and Dale Davis were 2 dudes, just like a lot of guys that I've talked about on this channel, who working class people in Indianapolis really fell in love with, and Indiana, like across the whole state. Like if you were a Pacers fan, you just fell in love with those 2 dudes because they battled every single game, every single night. They gave it everything they had. Didn't matter who they were going up against, whether it was Dennis Rodman or Patrick Ewing or any of those great bigs from the 90s. It didn't matter. They were going to go toe to toe up against them, and they were going to give it everything they had, and they were going to fight every minute of that game. So it's just one of those things where they were gritty, they were tough, and they actually fought. Like when I say fight, I'm not talking about they played tough. I'm talking about they were actually out there throwing punches and getting in scuffles and stuff like that. Like those Pacers would get in legit brawls because just because like that's what they had to do. Back then that was a lot more common in the NBA. They were still kind of transitioning away from enforcers being a thing. But Antonio and Dale Davis were kind of that next generation of enforcer where they could fight dudes and they could be physical and they could be tough, but they were also effective basketball players. Like, they could score here and there, they could rebound, they could pass, they actually play good defense, you know, all that type of stuff. They could actually do basketball things. But yeah, really wanted to make a video on them because those dudes are Pacers legends. Like, you ask anybody, you go to a Pacers game, ask them who Dale or Antonio Davis is, guarantee you, even someone my age could tell you who Dale or Antonio Davis is. Probably can tell you both of them because, like, they go hand in hand. Like, you talk about Dale Davis, then you talk about Antonio Davis. Like, you talk about both of them. It's not like a separate thing. Like, those two, you picture them together. Which is weird because they didn't, like, start a whole lot. Like, Antonio usually came off the bench. It was usually Rick Smits at center and Dale at power forward. But you always kind of think of those two together, even though, like, they played for the Raptors or New York or the Trailblazers. Pacers fans, we don't think about them in those uniforms. You think about them as Indiana Pacers because that's what they are through and through. They're Indiana Pacers. Once a Pacer, always a Pacer, especially when it comes to those dudes. But anyways, I'm Limitless Pools. I'll see y'all next time.
But you get the mix right, nigga, put it in the blender. Hell yeah, I'm Wingstop. Bitch, I'm selling chicken tenders. It's like the beef with energy and water like Kimber. Hey, turning, looking like dinner. It's like I got the bag, boy or girl.